The night air in Lagos was thick with humidity, but inside the glass tower of Okontech Industries, the central air hummed softly, floors above the city's chaos. Ian Otto wiped down the wide mahogany desk of the CEO's office. Her mop bucket parked beside her like an old friend. It was her favorite shift, quiet, uninterrupted. She often danced to her music while she cleaned, and tonight was no exception. A lively Afrobeat tune played from her small phone speaker as she twirled with the cleaning cloth in hand. "If anyone sees me now," Ian whispered with a smirk, "Nasak or showbiz, nothing in between." She laughed quietly, lost in the rhythm, until the sound of soft footsteps echoed in the hallway. Her heart dropped. She quickly muted the music and dived under the massive desk just as the door creaked open. From her hiding spot, she watched polished shoes step into the office. Tajudeen Okonkwo, the man whose portrait graced the corporate newsletters. He was the CEO, known for his sharp intellect and even sharper business instincts. Ian's heart pounded. She had seen him from afar during the day, but had never been this close. Tajudeen tossed his briefcase onto the desk and slumped into the chair, loosening his tie. He looked less like a powerful executive and more like a weary man carrying too much on his shoulders. "Give me an update now," he said, pressing the intercom button. The voice that responded was grim. "Sir, Redwood officially canceled this morning, and Orion pulled out this evening. That's 2 contracts gone in 2 weeks." Tajudeen didn't respond immediately. He leaned back and let the words sink in. "That sinks our quarter," he muttered. "The investors are already murmuring. There's pressure to make changes," the voice added carefully. "One more cancellation and—" "I know." Tajudeen snapped and softened. "Thank you. That'll be all." As the call ended, he rubbed his face with both hands and walked to the wide glass window overlooking the city. "If I fall alone," he whispered. Moments later, he grabbed his briefcase and exited the room, leaving the door ajar. Ian didn't move for several seconds. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. Slowly, she crawled out from under the desk, wide-eyed. "Congratulations, Ian," she muttered. "You've just become a corporate spy." She looked at the papers he'd left behind. Red graphs, contracts, budget sheets. While much of it was technical, one phrase stood out to her: cash flow crisis. Her mind began to work. 5 years ago, she would have been the one presenting these documents in a boardroom. But life had taken a sharp turn after her father's sudden heart attack. Ian had quit university with 3 courses remaining to care for her mother, who fell into depression. Her dreams of being a financial consultant had folded quietly into routines of mopping floors and scrubbing glass. But she had never stopped learning. Late nights with online classes, business books from roadside vendors, soap operas with corporate themes that, surprisingly, carried real strategies if you knew how to listen. On instinct, she rushed to reception and grabbed a notepad and pen. Returning to the office, she took a deep breath and sat in the CEO's chair. It felt surreal. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote. Cut losses by renegotiating the contract with the Southern Branch. Use Clause 13B. Stagger delivery over 120 days. Saves 18% and buys time to fix cash flow. She paused and added, "Sometimes the solution comes from where no one expects." She folded the paper and slid it under the monitor where he'd find it. Then she rose, returned everything to its place, and walked out as if nothing had happened. But her world had shifted. The next morning, Tajudeen arrived earlier than usual. The city hadn't yet woken, but his mind was already racing. He tossed his jacket onto the chair, switched on the monitor, and froze when he saw the folded note beneath it. He picked it up, frowning. As he read, his frown deepened, but not in anger. The clause mentioned was real, rarely used, but still valid. The numbers made sense. He reread it 3 times. "Clause 13B, he muttered, walking to the cabinet to pull out an older contract for reference. There it was, exactly as the note described. He pressed the intercom. "Priscilla, who came into my office last night?" She replied promptly, "Only the cleaning crew, sir. The system logs are clear. No one else." Tajudeen sat back, holding the note. No signature. No clue. Just a solution that could potentially save his company. For the first time in weeks, a glimmer of hope cut through the fog. That evening, Ian returned to her shift with a mix of panic and pride twisting in her chest. She had done something bold, possibly foolish, but her heart told her it was the right thing. You days shine today, oh. Nkechi Adigo teased as they stocked cleaning supplies. You get bonus way I don't know about? Maybe, Ian replied, unable to hide her smile. In truth, she didn't know what would happen next. Whether Tajudeen would act on her note, whether he'd find her out, whether he'd dismiss it as foolishness. But deep down, a small fire had lit inside her again. The same fire she'd once carried as a young business student. The fire of someone who had more to offer than what the world assumed. And so, as she entered Tajudeen Okonkwo's office once again, mop in hand and heart pounding, she whispered to herself, "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." The next few days at Okontech Industries were unusually quiet on the surface, but within the sleek glass walls of the executive floor, something had shifted. Tajudeen Okonkwo, known for his firm leadership and emotionless resolve, was curious. He stared at the folded note on his desk again, reading the careful handwriting like it held the secrets of buried treasure. The suggestion had worked. The Southern branch had agreed to renegotiate using Clause 13B. The 18% savings were real, and cash flow projections were already looking healthier. But who was behind it? He called in Priscilla again. Run another check on the logs from that night. Anyone who entered or even passed by my office. She returned 20 minutes later, tablet in hand. Same 3 names, sir. All from Eco Clean Services. No other entries between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Name them again. Maria Owolabi, Nkechi Adigo, in Ada. Tajudeen leaned back in his chair. The names meant nothing to him. They were night staff. Invisible, or so he thought. That night, Ian walked to the towering lobby of Okontech, mopping with practiced precision, but her mind was a whirlpool of nervous energy. She had watched Tajudeen from a distance that morning as he spoke to department heads. He looked more focused than usual, his voice more commanding. There was a light in his eyes again. The note had worked. That was all the confirmation she needed. "You look like person way win lottery," Nkechi whispered, smirking as they rode the elevator together. "Maybe I did." But that fire inside Ian, once dimmed by grief and struggle, was now blazing again. It wasn't enough to help from the shadows anymore. Maybe she could actually become part of the light. 2 floors up, in a conference room overlooking the city, Tajudeen drafted a new job posting. Senior Strategy Consultant, Innovation and Recovery Department, above market salary, flexible requirements, preference for out-of-box thinkers with unique insight into real-world problems. It was a long shot, but he couldn't shake the feeling. The person who left that note would be drawn to a challenge like this. By the next evening, the job listing had gone live across major portals. Down in the basement storage room, Nkechi held her phone up like it was gold. "Ian, come see this. Consultant job, Okontech, Nigerian naira 45 million per year plus benefits." Ian froze, heart jumping. "Let me see." As she read the job description, she recognized it instantly. This wasn't just any posting. The phrasing, the tone, it was bait. For her. Her pulse pounded. "This isn't for people like me," she whispered, handing the phone back. Nkechi gave her a hard look. "People like who?" "The ones with business degrees who mop floors because life threw them under a bus." "Nkechi, you know I love you, Ian, but enough is enough. Apply. I don't even have a proper resume. You helped me restructure my house budget and got my loan reduced by 40%. You remember that?" Ian nodded. "And when that guy from maintenance wanted to start poultry, who made the business plan that got him a grant?" Ian looked away. "You're already a consultant," Nkechi said gently. "You're just not getting paid like one." That night, Ian lay awake staring at the ceiling of the one-room apartment she shared with her mother. The software of the fan couldn't drown out her thoughts. Her mother coughed softly from the bed beside hers. Ian remembered the night it all changed. Her father had clutched his chest while reading the newspaper. He died before the ambulance arrived. Her mother had collapsed into grief, and Ian had traded lectures for laundry, classrooms for corridors, and dreams for daily survival. But the dreams never truly died. She got up quietly, tiptoed to the small table, opened her battered laptop, and began typing. Name, Ian Ada. Education, University of Abuja, Business Administration, completed. Experience, informal financial consulting, strategy development, operational restructuring. She hesitated before writing the job title. Then, with a soft smile, she typed, Process Optimization Specialist, Eco-Clean Services. She attached the only scanned copy of her certificate, adjusted her formatting, and hit submit. It felt like pressing a detonator. A silent explosion of hope. 2 days later, Ian was cleaning the executive hallway when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She froze. Her hands trembled as she answered. Hello, Miss Ada? This is Priscilla Walsh from Okontech Industries. Mr. Okonkwo reviewed your application and would like to schedule an interview. Ian nearly dropped her mop. I'm here. I'm available. Yes. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., Montgomery Tower. Executive floor. Please come with your resume and be ready to discuss growth strategies. Ian hung up, still frozen in place. Who day disturb cleaner for this kind hour? Nkechi asked, walking in. Ian turned to her, face pale, voice trembling. They called me. Nkechi dropped her broom and screamed. Ian, you got the interview? I did. The next day was a whirlwind. Nkechi helped Ian borrow a navy blue trouser suit, lent her a pair of low-heeled shoes, and helped style her hair. She even printed her resume on thick, cream paper and rehearsed answers with her until midnight. Remember, Nkechi said, you're not a cleaner pretending to be a consultant. You're a consultant who just hasn't been seen yet. At exactly 2 p.m., Ian sat outside the CEO's office on the top floor of the same building she had mopped for 3 years. Miss Ada? Priscilla called out. Yes, she replied, her voice smaller than she intended. Mr. Okonkwo will see you now. As she stepped into the office, Ian had a strange déjà vu. The same window, the same desk. But now she walked in upright, not crouching below it. Tajudeen stood, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked at her, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Miss Ada, he said slowly, pleasure to meet you. Thank you for the opportunity, sir, she said, praying he wouldn't recognize her. He motioned for her to sit. Let's begin. Ian Ada sat across from Tajudeen Okonkwo, heart pounding. The CEO reviewed her resume in silence, the ticking of his sleek office clock filling the room with tension. You completed your degree? He asked finally. Yes, sir, she replied, keeping her voice even, though I had to pause briefly during my final year due to family health issues. Tajudeen nodded slowly. And you worked most recently with Eco-Clean? Yes. A pause. Process optimization. He raised a brow. That's a broad term. She smiled, rehearsed but warm. It includes improving workflows, identifying waste, and maximizing efficiency, even in cleaning operations. Tajudeen leaned back, intrigued. Tell me, Miss Ada, if Okontech were a house, where would you check for hidden leaks? It was a test, and a loaded one. Ian answered without hesitation. I'd start with logistics. Then HR. Too much red tape delays talent. And I'd look at supplier contracts. Sometimes a leak isn't a hole, but a slow drip no one notices. Tajudeen scribbled a note, concealing a small smile. He had asked the same metaphor in a board meeting 3 months ago. None of his executives had answered that precisely. And her tone, the rhythm, the intuition, it echoed something familiar. Do you watch soap operas, Miss Ada? He asked suddenly. She blinked, caught off guard. Yes, sometimes. Why? Any favorites? I enjoy A Mars Empire. It's overdramatic, but surprisingly business-savvy. Tajudeen nodded. That matched the second anonymous note. He studied her carefully. Her eyes flicked briefly to the desk, the same one where she'd once hidden. She looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place her. Welcome to Okontech, he said at last. "You start Monday." Ian nearly choked. "Aye, thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you." Monday morning came with new shoes and a new life. Ian stepped into the building wearing the same confidence she once tucked away in a mop bucket. Priscilla walked her through the floor with a faint sense of suspicion. "You seem oddly familiar," she said, handing over an ID card. "Maybe I just have one of those faces." Ian replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Inside her new office, yes, office, Ian sat behind a real desk, opened her laptop, and stared out the window. It was the same view she had admired while mopping fingerprints off glass, but the night still belonged to her. She couldn't quit the eco-clean job. Not yet. Her first consultant paycheck wouldn't come for 4 weeks, and her mother's medication and their rent couldn't wait. So, at 7 p.m. that evening, Ian changed back into her uniform in a quiet bathroom on the 20th floor, tied up her hair, and became invisible again. "You know Wandai?" Nkechi asked, spotting her back in uniform. "Just for a few weeks," Ian whispered, "until the money comes." "But what if somebody sees you?" "They won't. Executives don't notice cleaners." But someone was watching. Zainab Bako sat at her vanity, reviewing surveillance photos on her phone. Her private investigator had been thorough. First, she zoomed in on Ian leaving the Okontech building in a suit. Then again, later that night, in a blue uniform. The same face. The same woman. "So, this is the famous mystery consultant," she whispered, her voice as sharp as the heel of her stiletto. Zainab had once been the queen of Okontech's social scene. Tajuddin's fiancé, bored darling, fashion icon, until he'd broken things off in front of the very people who once adored her. She never forgave him, and she never forgot. And now his company, her revenge project, was thriving because of a cleaner. She picked up her phone and dialed. "Ifani, meet me tomorrow. We have a situation." The next day, Ian left the building at exactly 6:15 p.m. As she turned onto the sidewalk, a woman stepped into her path. "Miss Ada?" Ian looked up, startled. The woman was tall, sharply dressed, with an expensive wool coat and a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Yes." "Zainab Bako," she said, extending a hand. "Can we talk?" Ian hesitated, then nodded cautiously. They walked down the block, turning into a quieter lane near a cafe patio. "I know who you are," Zainab said coolly. "I work at Okontech." "You clean Okontech at night," she interrupted, "and you consult there by day." Ian's face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." Zainab pulled out her phone and flashed a series of photos. Ian in a suit, Ian in uniform, Ian talking to Nkechi outside the service entrance. "Blackmail is illegal," Ian said, her voice barely steady. "I don't want your money," Zainab replied. "I want you gone. Resign by Friday or these photos go to the board. I'll let them decide whether your little double life counts as fraud." "Why?" Ian asked, "What did I ever do to you?" Zainab's voice turned venomous. "You ruined my second chance. This company was supposed to collapse, so I could return as its savior. Tajuddin was supposed to need me again. But then you came in with your notes and fixed everything." Ian stepped back, shocked. Zainab smiled coldly. "So now you disappear or I destroy you." That night, Ian couldn't sleep. She sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. Nkechi paced the room. "She's bluffing." "She's not." "Then we fight back," Nkechi said. "We show them who you are." Ian shook her head. "They won't believe me. All it will take is one board member who sees me as a cleaner and not a consultant. My work won't matter." "What will you do?" "I don't know." She looked at the photo on her bedside table. Her and her mother, arms around each other, smiling. "I did all this to give her a better life," she whispered. "But maybe it was too much to hope I could ever live both of mine." Plot twist setup begins here. Meanwhile, Tajuddin sat alone in his office, reading Ian's latest strategy memo on sustainable partnerships. The writing style, the subtle references to soap operas, it all clicked. He pulled out the old anonymous notes from his desk drawer. Side by side, he compared the phrasing. The same structure. The same cultural metaphors, the same rhythm. His eyes widened. No way. He stood up slowly, a smile spreading across his face. So, in Ada, you're the one who saved my company. And yet, something still didn't sit right. He had no idea someone else already had the same realization. Someone planning her downfall. The sun rose over Lagos like any other day, but for Ada, the light fell harsher than usual. Her nerves frayed from the blackmail, her mind racing with what-ifs. She dressed mechanically for work. The suit felt heavier than before. The heels dug deeper into her soles. She walked into Okonteka's headquarters with a plastered smile, hiding the storm inside. On the 30th floor, her morning briefing with Tijidin Okonkwo felt different. He studied her too closely, like he was peeling back a disguise. His questions were sharp, his eyes searching. "Miss Ada," he said mid-discussion, "how did you know the women's restroom on the 12th floor had faulty lighting last week?" Blinked. "I passed by it on my way to the marketing department. I noticed it. But marketing is on the 20th floor." A tense silence fell. "I must have been mistaken," Ian replied, heart pounding. Tajudeen said nothing. He simply nodded and moved on. But something in his demeanor shifted. She could feel it. Downstairs in the glass-walled boardroom, a storm was brewing. One Ian didn't see coming. Zainab Bako stood beside Chief Oladipo Akinyemi, her confidence like a sharp perfume. "Gentlemen, we have a problem," she said, dropping a folder onto the polished table. The directors flipped through printed photographs. Ian in her consultant outfit. Ian in her cleaning uniform. Ian talking to maintenance staff after hours. "She's been lying to all of you. She's not who she says she is." Robert Chin adjusted his glasses. "This is troubling. Troubling." Zainab scoffed. "It's deception. Fraud. This woman infiltrated the executive level using knowledge she gained as a cleaner. She eavesdropped. She spied. And now she's manipulating the company from within." Alhaji Suleiman rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "The results she's brought are built on unethical behavior." Zainab cut in. "And if the press gets wind of this?" Okonteka's new executive used espionage to climb the corporate ladder. Imagine the headlines. Chief Akinyemi nodded gravely. "Call for a disciplinary review. Immediately." By noon, Ian was summoned to the 25th floor conference room. She knew the moment she stepped inside that something was wrong. 5 directors sat with stiff expressions. At the far end of the table sat Zainab, smiling like a viper in silk. Chief Akinyemi stood. "Miss Ada, please sit." Ian lowered herself into the chair, her palms already clammy. "We've received evidence that calls your professional conduct into question," he began. Zainab slid the folder down the table toward her. "You've been living a double life, Ian. Cleaner by night, consultant by day. Did you disclose this during your interview?" Ian's mouth went dry. "No, but I never lied about my qualifications." "But you omitted your current job status," Robertson added. "I was afraid you'd judge me, that you'd never give me a chance." "Which you used to gain access to confidential meetings," Akinyemi interjected. "Your recommendations may have been accurate, but they were gathered under unethical circumstances." "That's not true," Ian said, finding her voice. "Yes, I overheard something once, but I applied based on my knowledge and education. My strategies came from real insight, not theft." Zainab stood, flipping through another document. "Miss Ada, do you deny that you were in the building in your cleaning uniform 3 nights ago?" I haven't received my first paycheck yet. I needed the money." "So you were working 2 jobs inside the same company and never informed anyone," Akinyemi concluded. "Where's Mr. Okonkwo?" Ian asked, desperate now. "He knows my work. He understands." "This is a board matter," Robert said. "Mr. Okonkwo has been removed from this discussion due to emotional involvement." Ian's heart cracked at the words. Removed. So he had stayed silent after all. "Effective immediately," Akinyemi continued. "You are suspended from your role, pending investigation. Security will escort you from the premises." Ian rose slowly, trembling, but held her head high. I may have worn 2 uniforms, but I've only ever had one purpose: helping this company succeed. You can't take that from me." She walked out as the directors watched, unmoved. That evening, in a quiet corner of Queens, Ian sat beside her mother, holding her hand. "I thought I could have both lives," she whispered. "But maybe the world only lets people like me clean up after the powerful, not become one of them." Mama Ada squeezed her hand weakly. "My daughter, you are bigger than what they see." But Ian wasn't sure anymore. Meanwhile, back at Okontech, Tajudeen was losing control. Marcus, his VP, burst into his office. "Sir, Meridian Industries just canceled their 35 billion Nigerian nairas contract. They claim someone leaked our strategy." "What?" Marcus handed him a printed email. They said the proposal was compromised. They found a nearly identical one from Titanium Group. Tajudeen stood in stunned silence. Titanium, Zainab. His mind snapped back to the last anonymous note Ian had left, just before she was suspended. A warning about internal sabotage. And now it was happening. "I need access logs. Pull every file request on the Meridian project in the last 2 weeks." "Yes, sir." Moments later, Tajudeen had the report. Access granted from the account of Afani Uma. Time, 2:11 a.m., just as Ian had warned. That night, Tajudeen drove through the bustling roads of Lagos Island, across the bridge to Queens. He parked in front of the building listed in Ian's HR records and climbed to the 3rd floor. He knocked on the faded door. Ian answered, stunned. "Mr. Okonkwo?" "I came to apologize." She folded her arms. "You let them humiliate me." "I tried to intervene." "You tried." Tajudeen exhaled, eyes sincere. "You were right. The sabotage, it's real. Meridian pulled out today. They got our strategy from inside. From Afani." Ian's face fell. "Zainab. She's behind it. And I need your help to stop her. I'm not your employee anymore. I don't care about titles right now. I care about saving the company. 300 jobs are at risk. I need your mind. Your courage." Ian stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Come in." The first rays of dawn streaked through the windows of Ian Ada's modest apartment as she and Tajudeen Okonkwo sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by sheets of paper, digital files, and empty coffee mugs. The table, usually home to her mother's herbal remedies and old newspapers, had transformed into a war room. Ian wore a faded wrapper and plain t-shirt, her hair tied back. She didn't look like a consultant or a cleaner. She looked like a strategist. "If we're going to stop Zainab," she said, circling something on her notebook, "we need to give her what she wants. The illusion that you're desperate." Tajudeen leaned in, desperate enough to sell part of the company to her. "Exactly. And while she thinks she's winning, we'll be recording everything." He hesitated. "We need legal proof." "I have someone," she said. "A cousin. He works in corporate compliance. He'll set it up quietly." "And Meridian?" "We win them back," she said confidently. "But we do it in person with a presentation so detailed that no one who copied us can fake it." Tajudeen stared at her. "Do you realize how brilliant you are?" She ignored the compliment. "We don't have time for flattery. Let's get to work." By noon, the wheels were in motion. Marcus had scheduled an emergency meeting with Meridian's executive team for the following afternoon. Ian worked through the night crafting a technical pitch. So precise, so tailored to Meridian's operations, that anyone who merely copied surface details would be exposed. She included predictive logistics modeling, employee retention forecasts, and a real-time distribution algorithm drawn from 3 soap operas plot twists: Power and Betrayal, Inheritance of Empire, and Market Hearts, but turned into actual financial modeling with regional data overlays. She smirked as she tested the simulations onto Tajudeen's laptop. "If Titanium copied our pitch, they won't survive 5 minutes in that room." The next day at 2 p.m., Tajudeen stood before a table of skeptical Meridian executives. CEO Ibrahim Dinladi, COO Sarah Kocha, and consultant engineer Lanra Adebayo. "You already canceled our deal," Tajudeen began. "But we believe you were offered a counterfeit proposal. Let us prove our original holds unmatched value." Ibrahim narrowed his eyes. You've got one chance. Een, dressed plainly, was introduced as an implementation strategist. She stepped forward and opened her laptop, her voice steady, her slide sharp. She walked them through phase one, a distribution overhaul tailored to Meridian's warehouse heat mapping, coastal road degradation trends, and seasonal delivery gaps in the South-South region. Lanra asked a highly technical question about node prioritization in coastal supply lines. Ian answered smoothly. We simulated real-time route adjustments using data from NPA dredging reports. That's why the optimization curve dips at week 12. It anticipates seasonal flooding. Sarah Okocha blinked. Titanium's proposal didn't even mention flooding. Lanra leaned back, impressed. They offered generalized cost-saving projections. Nothing like this. After 90 minutes, Ibrahim stood. You're right. Someone fed us a fake. We're reinstating the contract with a 12% bonus for early execution. Ian let out a slow breath as Tajuddin shook his hand. Meanwhile, at 3:15 p.m., Zainab Bako strolled into Tajuddin's office like a queen returning to her throne. She wore a burgundy gown and held a leather folder in one hand, full of forged investment documents. Taj, darling, she said, settling into the visitor's chair. I heard you're in crisis. Tajuddin played the part well. He leaned against the desk, pretending to be drained. You were right, Zainab. I should have listened. Everything's falling apart. She smiled. I'm ready to help you, she said smoothly. I'll buy 40% of Okontech. Bring in Titanium's partners. Within 3 months, we'll be back on top. And what do you want in return? Her eyes glittered. Control, leadership, partnership, maybe something more. Tajuddin clenched his jaw but nodded. All right, but how do I know you're capable of saving us? Zainab laughed, rising to pace. Because I engineered this whole mess. She turned dramatically, arms wide. Redwood? Orion? Sabotaged by me. I had a Fani feed Titanium all your confidential data, even the Meridian project, gone because of me. Tajuddin's gaze hardened. Why would you do this? Because you humiliated me, Taj. You left me. Now I leave you no choice but to need me. At that moment, the office door opened. 2 security officers entered, followed by Marcus and Ian, holding a recording device. Zainab's expression dropped. What is this? Confession, Ian said calmly. Corporate sabotage, espionage, extortion. You recorded me? She shrieked. Legally, Marcus said, holding up the documentation. Your admission was obtained in a voluntary business negotiation. The security men stepped forward. You can't do this. Zainab screamed, but she was already being escorted out, her heels clicking furiously on the marble floor. As the doors closed behind her, silence fell. Tajuddin turned to Ian. You did it. She looked down, her chest rising and falling. No, we did it. That evening, news of the incident exploded across business blogs and social media. Headlines blazed. Queen of Sabotage, Zainab Bako arrested in corporate espionage plot. Cleaning lady consultant exposes high-level insider threat. And trending above them all was a tag. Hashtag the hidden genius. The next morning, the Okontech board convened for an emergency meeting. Tajuddin arrived armed with one thing. Facts. He laid down the renewed Meridian contract. The 43% efficiency boost metrics. The employee engagement improvements, press clippings, internal staff testimonials. And finally, he said, these were all made possible by Ian Ada. Chief Akinyemi cleared his throat, even if her methods were unorthodox. She broke no law, Tajuddin said. And the results? Unmatched. Ian is the reason we survived. And what do you propose? I want her reinstated with a promotion. Head of a new innovation directorate. The room fell silent. Then Robertson said quietly, we nearly lost the greatest mind this company ever had, because we judged her uniform. Chief Akinyemi sighed. Motion pass. That afternoon, Tajuddin stood outside Ian's apartment again. This time, she opened the door smiling. You're here. I'm here to say the board reinstated you. Ian stared at him, wide-eyed. Really? With a promotion? Innovation director. Ian's hands trembled as she leaned against the doorframe. I don't even know what to say. Tajudeen stepped closer. Then don't say anything. Just come back. We need you. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. I'm ready. 6 months after she was reinstated, Ian Atta stood at the head of the sunlit boardroom on the 28th floor of Okontech Industries. No longer a night cleaner hiding behind mops and buckets. She was now Director of Innovation, and her latest initiative was about to change lives. On the screen behind her was a bold title, the Hidden Talents Program. She turned to the room of executives and senior managers. Across this company, she began, we have people with untapped brilliance, working as driver, janitors, security officers, cooks. Many of them have degrees, skills, or insights we've ignored. This program is designed to find and empower them. No one spoke. Then, slowly, Head began to nod. Her first test case had already stunned everyone. Benga Oak, a security guard on the night shift, had quietly been writing reports on energy use, even suggesting motion sensor lighting to save cost. Ian invited him for an informal interview, only to learn he was studying engineering part-time. Now, Benga was on a 3-month internship with the facilities team and thriving. Real talent, Ian continued, doesn't come with a suit. It comes with dedication, curiosity, and opportunity. Applause broke out. After the meeting, Tajudeen Okonkwo waited by the doorway, smiling. You've turned this company into something I never imagined, he said. I didn't do it alone, she replied, but she blushed. They left together, walking down the corridor that had once been the place she avoided out of fear. Now it was hers. That weekend, Ian hosted a small dinner at her home. Nkechi was there, now promoted to executive assistant in the innovation directorate. Benga brought his 2 kids. Ian's mother, healthier and radiant, watched with proud eyes. This is what I always prayed for, Mama Atta whispered to her daughter as they cleaned up after the guests. Not just that you would succeed, but that you'd help others do the same. Ian hugged her tightly. I still remember you telling me that intelligence has no dress code. The next month, Okontech hosted its first Hidden Talents Fair. Every department was encouraged to nominate overlooked staff. Instead of resumes, candidates gave short practical demonstrations or shared personal case studies. A kitchen assistant demonstrated a custom inventory tracking system she created using Google Sheets. A janitor delivered a 5-minute speech on customer experience that stunned the HR director. The program made national headlines. Okontech revolutionizes talent discovery. From cleaners to corporate leaders, other companies called, wanting to implement similar systems. Within 3 months, the hashtag Hidden Genius hashtag trended again, and Ian was invited to speak at the Africa Business Forum in Nairobi. Her TED Talk titled Talent Doesn't Wear Titles received over 4 million views in its first week. At home, Ian continued to live modestly. She donated half her salary to a new foundation, the Atta Initiative, focused on training underprivileged workers in business literacy, technology, and leadership. But she hadn't left her past behind. Twice a month, she still volunteered at night, cleaning public schools, community centers, and even the hospital where her father had passed. Why do you still clean? Tajudeen once asked her as they sat together after work. Because I never want to forget, she said. That real change doesn't start from the top. It rises from the floor. 1 year later, Ian stood on the grand stage of the National Business Leadership Awards in Abuja, dressed in a simple but elegant white gown. The crowd of 500 CEOs, investors, and government officials rose in a standing ovation. She held the golden trophy in her hands, voice steady as she addressed the crowd. This award doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every driver, cleaner, and guard who was ever told they didn't belong in the boardroom. It belongs to the unseen. Tears welled in her eyes. A few years ago, I was cleaning this very hotel's lobby. Now I'm here not because I wore the right clothes, but because I never stopped believing in my mind. The applause shook the chandeliers. From the front row, Tajudeen rose from his seat and walked onto the stage. Ian turned, stunned. He took the mic. "Ian Otta," he began, voice trembling just slightly. "You didn't just save a company. You changed what we believe about leadership, worth, and possibility." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. "You changed my world," he said, getting down on one knee. "Will you marry me?" Ian covered her mouth in disbelief, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes." The ballroom exploded in cheers as he placed the ring on her finger and kissed her on the stage. 6 months later, Bow Bridge in Lagos Botanical Gardens was transformed for their wedding. White flowers lined the railings. Guests from across the country, executives, cleaners, family, press, gathered to witness what many now called the Cinderella story of Nigerian business. Ian walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, not to escape her past, but to honor it. During her vows, she said, "To Jadine, you saw value in me when others saw a uniform. But more than that, you let me be me. I promise to never stop fighting for those who are still unseen." And to Jadine replied, "You reminded me that true leadership comes not from status, but from service. I vow to lead with you, beside you always." When they kissed, pigeons from the garden flew overhead, as if offering a blessing. The final twist came 3 months later. Ian sat at her office desk, now Vice President of Corporate Transformation, holding a letter in her hand. "Random House Publishing," she whispered, reading aloud. "We are thrilled to offer you a publishing contract for your memoir, From Mop to Mastermind." The book would go on to become a bestseller in 27 countries, translated into 12 languages, and adapted for a Netflix original movie. In the final scene of her life's next chapter, Ian sat at a community college, watching her students take a class she created. Leadership from the ground up. She smiled, knowing this was just the beginning.